All right, well, thank you everybody for staying. I kind of figured there'd be like a cricket in the audience since it's the last presentation of Summit. Summit's been awesome, especially around JQL. Like, it's just been a huge shot in the arm for me. I'm going to try and take that energy back to the guys that have been working on JQL because you guys all seem really excited. I know I'm excited, and it's good stuff. So I am Dylan Etkin. I am the Jira technical lead for JQL. I noticed that for these Charlie Talks, there was some marketing around that, and the marketing said that the Charlie Talks were going to be like TED, only better, right? So I think, first of all, I probably need to just dispel that myth and say that JQL is A, not going to cure cancer, B, we didn't use any giant kites to like generate the electricity that we use to code up JQL, although I do believe the climate crisis does exist, in no way, shape, or form is JQL going to raise awareness of the climate crisis. But the one thing JQL will do is unlock your data, and that's pretty exciting. So a brief history about me. Like I say, my name is Dylan Etkin, and I've worked at Atlassian for the last 4 years. Each of those, that whole time, I've worked on the Jira team. So I've worked on a range of projects from project import all the way to wiki renderable fields, and I've seen an awful lot. And I have to say, by far, that JQL is probably the most exciting feature that I've ever worked on. What is JQL? I think by this point at Summit, you probably all know exactly what JQL is, but let me just reiterate. It's an advanced query language for Jira. The syntax is SQL-like, so it should be familiar to a lot of you. It's also integrated with searching inside of Jira, so Jira's searching underneath the covers is JQL. Queries that get built in the Navigator are JQL. Saved queries are saved as JQL, so you can integrate JQL with your charts and your reports, and just like you could save filters in Jira all along. Now, the story of JQL is a bit interesting. About October of last year, I start hearing these rumblings around the office, and the rumblings are a founder's interested in searching in Jira. And these guys would know that, when a founder gets interested in anything, we just all get nervous, right? We're like, well, what's going to happen? Oh my goodness, what kind of code's going to come here? So about a month later, right, I get pulled over to Mike Kenbrook's desk, and I'm sitting there, and he's showing me pretty much the precursor to JQL, right? This prototype that he had written, and it was all more or less there. There was ands and ors and nots. You could search on the different fields. And it was pretty exciting stuff. I mean, the more he showed me, the more I just sort of got really excited and started thinking, this is awesome. This is a really good idea. And he sort of offhandedly mentions that it took him about 3 days to create, halfway over the Pacific, one of those sorts of things. And I've worked at Atlassian for quite a while, so I have this formula, right? The formula goes like 1 founder day equals 2 real coding months. So I'm thinking, well, okay, 6 months, that's a pretty big feature. It's something to not be taken lightly. So off I go, and I start sort of researching what this thing would be about. And the more I look, the more I just get really excited. And I start to realize that our customers have some of the most exciting data locked up inside of Jira. And there's over 1,000 votes on jira.atlassian.com, and they're all basically saying the same message, which is set my data free, right? And that's the idea of JQL, is to really allow you to have the power in your own hands to find those issues that you couldn't find in the past. So I really think that the best way to sort of show you what JQL is about is to just jump right in and show you what JQL is about. Now, the use case that I'm trying to demonstrate here is something that happens to me all the time. Now, like maybe somebody in support is dealing with some sort of customer, and they have some sort of issue, and they come up to me and they're describing the issue, and they're sort of telling me all these things, and immediately I sort of just, like, a light bulb goes on, right? Bing, I've seen this issue before. I know what you're talking about, so I quickly jump onto jira.atlassian.com, I type in the text that they're telling me, and it brings back, nothing. So obviously, the way the problem is being described now is slightly different from the way it was described at the time, but I know there's an issue out there, and I'm pretty sure that it has a workaround or at least some really helpful information that would help these people. So I think let me just jump quickly into this demo. The way that I think about it, right, is I ask myself, what do I know about this issue, right? So, I mean, I work on the Jira project, so I'm pretty sure that it's going to be an issue that's in the Jira project, right? So I run this search, and I don't know if you can see back there, but that brings back 15,536 search results, right? That's probably a little bit broad. I need to slim that down a bit. So like I say, I mentioned that I worked at Atlassian for 4 years. Well, that means pretty much that I can know that this would have happened in a version that would have been greater than or equal to version 3.3, because that's about the version that was going on when I joined. And I also know that the issue will be less than or equal to version 3.12, which is probably about a year ago, because I know it's not something that I saw just the other day. So I run that query, and we're down to 3,977, right? Better, but not quite good enough. Like I mentioned, it was an issue that I thought would have given some sort of catharsis to this individual. So probably there were some votes or some sort of activity around the issue. So I would go ahead and look for issues that had votes that are greater than 0. All right, so we're down to 801 results now, all right? So we're getting a little bit closer. I guess another piece of information that I also know is that the fixed version is not empty. I think I'm losing that off the side of the screen. Let me just re-maximize that. There we go. Right, so down to 210 votes. So we're getting closer, getting closer. And probably the last piece of information that I can really remember off the top of my head is that obviously I know something about this issue, right? And that's probably because I made a comment on the issue, or I was once assigned to the issue or something along those lines. And I seem to remember that, when I jog my memory about this, that I had a conversation with a coworker, Nick Manier, that he probably had something to do with the issue too. I don't really remember why, but let's throw that in there. Right, and there we are. We're down to 5 issues. I can scan the issues really quickly. JRA 10,065, that was the issue I was looking for. Cascading select custom field doesn't pop up in the move issue screen. And there we go, right? So I think the point to take home from that is that JQL really allows you to just sort of take what you know about issues, express it in a fairly expressive language, right? Like looking for the issues that have more than 0 votes, that definitely do have a fixed version, that sort of thing, and really find the issues that you couldn't find before in a fairly quick manner. Right, so now that I've shown you JQL, we need to discuss a little bit about what we've seen there. So Jira is all about the fields, right? It's all about the data that you insert into your fields. It's all about the relationships of the data between the fields. So as you saw, I was typing little clauses or expressions there, right? Where I had a left-hand side, an operator, and a right-hand side. The left-hand side are your fields in Jira. So your system fields like summary, description, those sorts of things, those can be your left-hand side values. Obviously, Jira is famous for its custom fields as well. So custom field names can be your left-hand side value. Jira does allow you to specify custom fields with multiple names, like the same name. So if you specify one of those fields, JQL will go off and search for values across both of those fields. And if you don't want that, we've allowed you this special syntax, which is CF, square bracket, and then the ID of the custom field. So if you need to build a query that's actually very specific about the field that you want to search for, you can utilize that. And I guess the real take-home message about the fields is that JQL is going to allow you to relate your fields in ways that you're never able to do, right? Using the Boolean operators and, or, and not, and any sort of sub-nested expressions, you can really create these powerful relationships that just didn't exist before. Now we've talked about the left-hand side, let's talk about the middle a bit, right? The operators. So we've got good old equals, right? Jira's always had equals. Issue Navigator, you plunk in the version that you want to search on, and Jira was going off and finding you all the issues where the version was exactly the version that you had typed in. More excitingly, we've now got not equals. This is like one of the, I've mentioned this to a few people in talks, and they just go, awesome! So it's really exciting for us, and it's really exciting to see everybody get excited about it as well. Relational operators included as well. So relational operators allow you to search. You can use them in conjunction with any fields that have ordering. So obviously versions is a really good example where you specify the ordering of your versions, and you can say, where the fixed version is going to be greater than 1.1. And that's all versions that are after that. And then probably the most voted for and exciting thing that JQL adds is that you can search on your data where the values are not set, right? So where a value is either empty or null. That in alone was 350 votes right there. And I think people were just dying for that. So we talked about the left-hand side, we've talked about the middle, talk a little bit about the right-hand side, right? That's values. That's the information that you have put into your Jira instance. So what we've tried to do is we've tried to be as forgiving as we could possibly be and as flexible as we could possibly be. You can specify the string names for your values. We're not going to make you go off and find the ID at all times. So like if you have a version that is denoted by a string, you can specify 1.1. And we'll resolve that to the actual version that exists inside of Jira. Now, one of the cool implications of that is that you can actually do cross-product searching with some of that sort of behavior. So let's say you have a Jira instance where you have a few projects and you have consistently named versions. What you can do is you can type in a search that says, fixed version is equal to 1.1, and that will search all versions in Jira that match 1.1. Now, obviously, you don't always want to do that, so we also allow you to type in the IDs if you want to be more specific, or you can always constrain a query by, say, a project or something along those lines. Probably one of the most exciting bits is functions, right? Now, early on, when we were trying to figure out how to do this whole JQL thing, we realized, obviously, that we would need to replicate all the behavior of the existing issue navigator. And I don't know if you're familiar with the issue navigator or not, but it sort of allows you to do these sort of stateful transformations, right? So like a good example is the assignee field. You can say, I want to search for the assignee where it is the current user, right? Which kind of implies that Jira knows when it runs the query who is logged in, right? It knows that you're the one executing the search, therefore you're logged in as Joe, and it should use Joe as the assignee. So this idea of transformations, right, just screamed functions. And we thought, so immediately as we started doing it, we went, well, this is an awesome plug-in point. I think just developers would go crazy here because you can really do anything. The power of functions sort of just gives you this plug-in point where you just sort of can run off and, inspect any sort of system that you want. Obviously, it needs to be somewhat performant to not bog down the search. But it's very exciting. So we've got a ton of cool built-in functions in Jira 4.0. Some of the cooler ones is your voted issues. So in other words, the issues that you voted on. Watched issues in the same vein. Issue history in Jira 4.0 is persistent. So there's a issue history function. So if you've sort of been navigating around Jira and you want to find something that you've looked at but you don't quite remember what the issue was, you plunk in the issue history function and that limits you down to like the last 50 issues that you've seen. Completely pluggable, as I said. One of the cooler ones that I think is in there is subqueries. We don't actually support subqueries as a first level construct in the language, but you can do it via a function. So you could say assignee is in the subquery function where you give it another piece of JQL and then you tell that function that you want to pull out the reporter, right? And that would get all the reporters in that other JQL and find you all the assignees that are that reporter. So it's pretty exciting. Not last at all, and not least at all, is autocomplete, right? This is 2009. We're not evil. We're not going to make you remember all these strings that you type into your instance. I don't think that's humanly possible, right? So what we did was we included a JavaScript version of the parser that lives inside your browser, and it actually goes and inspects as you type, to try and see where you are in your query. So what it will do is it'll complete field names for you. So all the fields that you can actually see inside of Jira, those will be options for you to autocomplete, right? It'll complete the operators for you as well. And probably most excitingly is the values. So any fields that have a finite set of values, you'll be able to autocomplete things like users, versions, and that sort of stuff. Obviously things like votes, which is a number, or description, which is any old text, we don't actually autocomplete that for you. And it'll autocomplete the logical operators for you as well. So I've spent a lot of time now talking about the meat and potatoes of JQL, or the sort of where clause, right? The way of specifying the search criteria. But that's not all that JQL includes. It's probably important to note at this point, if you're familiar with SQL, right, JQL doesn't force you to sort of do a select star from issue. There's sort of an implicit assumption that we are searching issues, and therefore it allows you to just sort of type in the query starting with the where clause, right, without the where keyword. But what we also include is an order by clause, right? So, I mean, you're probably very familiar with Jira at the moment. When you do searching and you get this issue table back, there's some little headers on the top of each column, and that's the fields that you're displaying. And if you want to order your search in some sort of different way, you just sort of click on that header, and immediately, that reorders your search, and you can save those orderings. Well, that's fully built in with JQL. So JQL, you specify this order by, and then you specify a field name, and you can specify ascending or descending, right? And it's fully integrated with the UI, so that if you're on the advanced screen and you're sort of clicking the little header row, that'll actually change the text of your JQL query for you. So, I don't think actually any of you should zone out because there's not enough of you. But this is the part where I would allow developers to just zone out, because this is probably, from my propeller head perspective, the most exciting part, right? The sexy API is what we've done to Jira's searching. Obviously, a transformation like this in Jira requires a fair amount of reworking of search code because it was a really old set of APIs that had grown really organically. Yeah, there you go. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. The good news is things have gotten a lot cleaner, right? So in the old days, there was this search request, which was basically a kitchen sink of anything you could think of searching. It was this insanely stateful object that did everything under the sun. It's still there, but it's been cleaned up like you wouldn't believe. It's a bean now, right? And that bean holds a reference to this query object. And query has become the core of searching in Jira. Query is an immutable object, so cache away. You obviously will need some sort of mechanism for building this query object, right? And to that effect, we've created this JQL builder. That's what I've got on the slide here, so just a quick rundown, right? We've got a JQL builder. You utilize it in a sort of fluent manner, such that like you specify the query in code in the same way that you would think to specify it in JQL when entering it. So here we just specify where we have a where clause, that the project is TST. We want to end that together with a fixed version that will be greater than 3.2. We end the where, and then we start an order by where we say the fixed version is what we want to order by, and we want to sort that descending, right? And that build query will give you one of these immutable query objects. Now, once you've got that query object, you want to go off and grab yourself a search service, right? That's a new object inside of Jira, and that sort of exposes all the methods that you should need as a client of searching in Jira, right? So it'll allow you to, A, perform the search. Obviously, there's some things about new queries fitting inside the old navigator. That object will allow you to determine the fitness of that query. And it'll allow you to get certain URLs that you want to be able to send off to the issue navigator and that sort of thing. And then probably the other take-home point is that custom field searchers are still the main extension point for searching inside of Jira. They've changed a bit, like searchers in general have changed. Their interface has been cleaned up a fair bit. And there's a little bit of new responsibility around the custom field searchers that sort of integrates with JQL. So Jira 4.0 source code has all changed to utilize these new objects. All the searchers internal have changed. They've already been converted. Everything inside of Jira is using a query builder. So as plugin developers, I would recommend that you just basically go grab the source. The 4.0 beta is up now. Check out the source. It should be a good guideline for what you need to do to get your stuff compliant. And I think you'll probably really like the changes once you get your head around them. Can I just leave it to the very end? I just have one last slide. Okay, thanks. There we go. So that's it. I just want to reiterate, though, I guess the take-home points from this presentation is that JQL provides an advanced way of searching in Jira, and the idea is that it's really going to lift the covers off of the bed and expose all those hidden issues that hadn't seen the light of day for a long time to you and to anybody who's using your Jira instances. And it's easily extendable via functions. I really do expect that the next FedEx Day is going to have a lot of Atlassian developers creating a lot of wacky functions that I never envisioned. I do think that once 4.0 comes out, there'll be a ton of functions out in the ecosystem, and we're shipping with a ton of cool functions out of the box. More excitingly, there's fields that you could never search before as well. So it gives you all sorts of new things, and I think it's really the answer to the question of how am I going to unlock this data inside of Jira. And lastly, it wouldn't be fair if I didn't make a shout out to Michael Toker, Toby Rahili, and Brendan Bain, because those guys have worked their ass off for the last 6 months making this thing work. cutting through reams of old and stinky code inside of Jira, replacing it with shiny, new, pretty code. So, yeah, I'll take any questions at this point.
With Java docs, right?
Absolutely. The question was with Java docs, right? And absolutely. You'll see we've tried to Java doc all of our interfaces like pretty well. The builder still has a few to-dos because we were more concerned with the beta. We wanted to get our APIs solid. And that's something that we did accomplish, right? So I think you can fairly well take the beta, update your plugins, and I don't think you're going to see too many core API changes between here and final. Obviously, we are going to fix up some of the documentation.
So we do a lot of integration with external systems like Salesforce, and of course, all of our customers have been asking for better searching in that integration. So I think, of course, the functions is going to be one key part of that. Another really cool part of that would be if there was an API into the autocomplete. So that part of that autocomplete would go to external systems and return data just like you're returning Jira data.
Let me just repeat the question for the camera. So the question is that he is integrating with a lot of third-party tools such as Salesforce, and is there a way to utilize the functions to integrate with with autocomplete and with the functions themselves? And the answer is yes. There is the interface that you will implement from your custom field searcher. There's a sub-interface, which is a clause handler interface, which basically has the little bit that generates the Lucene query and the little bit that does validation. Right now, that is the main interface that we expose. There's a sub-interface that we've actually documented. I was just reviewing the docs earlier today, where if you implement that interface, I think it's called autocomplete aware or something like that. Right? It basically gives you another hook, which is a method that will be called, right? Like if you've provided that handler, then you will get an opportunity to suggest something in autocomplete. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Are there any other questions? Yeah, in the back.
Is it possible to search, because you said on the left-hand side you can have fields, can you sort of make a search that goes out with, for instance, where fixed version and effective version is the same?
Right, okay, so the question is, can the right-hand side value of JQL be a field as well? And the answer is no. We can do that using, let's say, a function, right? Like there's nothing stopping us from doing that, but we didn't implement that sort of row joining or something like that, right? Any other questions? Yeah? Right. The question is, are we exposing it via REST? And the answer is not at this moment. But well, actually, sorry, that's completely incorrect. There's always been a sort of RESTful exposure of searching in Jira. It's not as lovely as, say, Don's talk would describe it to be, because it's via the issue navigator. There's a different set of views. I don't know if you're familiar with that. So there's an XML view, an Excel view, a Word view, and that sort of thing. So you can get you can get XML with JQL from that view, right? And we've also implemented a feature in Jira 4.0 that allows you to specify only the fields that you want. So you can specify a query using JQL, constrain it by the fields that you want, and get a sort of RESTful version of the data. We're sort of toying with at the moment. We don't know if it's going to go into 4.0 or not. We have one of our developers has done for 20% a select clause for JQL that allows you to sort of specify your fields in the JQL itself. There's just there's issues that we want to just tease out between how that relates to the configurable columns that are already inside of Jira before we decide whether we want to put that in or not. And we probably will, when we properly visit REST in Jira, there will be another mechanism for searching in Jira, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to expose JQL via our SOAP interface, because that's still our primary remote interface. And then I think at some point we will launch an entire RESTful service that will have URLs that really make sense for Jira. And once we figure out what that'll be, obviously JQL will be involved in that. Yeah.
We use the Confluence macro, the Jira issues macro quite a bit.
Yep.
Plans to do like a macro for Confluence where you can do queries and display Jira issues that way.
Right. The question was, they use the Confluence macro, and will there be a way of using a JQL in the Confluence macro? I don't see why not. I don't know the full details of how the Confluence macro works, but I'm pretty sure that it just executes a search, right? Yeah, if I remember correctly in configuring it for our release notes, you basically just put in, the fixed version equals whatever, ampersand, whatever you put the URL in, and Jira responds to JQL URLs, right? So you basically, the only thing that you'd need to do is encode that URL, because obviously JQL has a greater than, less than operators and spaces and stuff like that. Yeah. Any further questions? Well, thank you guys for staying till the end. I appreciate that. And thank you guys for all the energy that's come our way for JQL as well.